A very warm welcome to all of our audience at GOTGM. Today we are graced with the presence of Prof Dr. Azlina, who will be speaking on a very interesting topic called a plant-based diet, to meat or not to meat. So meat here as in MEAT. So welcome, Prof Azlina.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for having me on this talk.
It's our pleasure, Doctor. So I think before we dive into the topic, it's only right that the audience knew a little bit more about our special guest here today. So allow me to do the introduction. So Dr. Azlina is a professor at the Department of Molecular Medicine, and she graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from University of Malaya. And she also then proceeded to do her Master's in Human Nutrition as well as a PhD in Nutritional Biochemistry, both of these from the University of Glasgow. And she was actually awarded a scholarship by the Malaysian government to undertake both of these postgraduate degrees. As of now, Dr. Azlina's research interest is in the field of nutrition as well as the discovery of natural products. And her research group is actually interested in identifying and isolating bioactive compounds from plant sources, and in an attempt to establish the mode of action as antioxidants, as well as how they protect cellular components against oxidative damage. And her research group is also investigating how some of the antioxidant-rich plants and plant extract may actually affect the signaling pathways involved in disease development. Along with that, Dr. Azlina is also studying the effect of redox imbalance in patients with several disease conditions, including thyroid disorders as well as obesity. And as of now, Dr. Azlina is the head of the Department of Molecular Medicine and has more than 20 years of experience in the academia. So once again, we are honored to have you here with us, Dr. Azlina.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction.
All right. So I guess we can dive right into our topic today, which is a plant-based diet, to meat or not to meat. So perhaps, Doctor, you can enlighten us a bit on what exactly is a plant-based diet. And if let's just say I'm looking forward to start a plant-based diet, what are maybe some of the general foods that would be included in a diet like that?
Yeah, I think as the name implies, right, plant-based diet meaning that is referring to majority of your food being plant-based. So the plant-based diet is probably predominantly made up of whole plant foods, and it minimizes or excludes animal products as well as byproducts of animals. But when we talk about plant-based diets, it's very much the individuals itself can decide, what sort of food they want to eat. But as long as majority of the food that they eat is made up of plants, it can be fruits, it can be vegetables, it can be whole grains, beans, pulses, and all that. So those are considered as plant-based diets. Okay. So there are actually, when we talk about plant-based diets, there are actually several types of plant-based diets, going from the strictest like vegans to the least strict diet like the semi-vegetarians that allows occasional meat consumption. Okay, so like I said earlier, people who follows a plant-based diet, they typically eat foods such as fruits and vegetables, legumes like beans or peas or lentils, grains, nuts, and seeds. So going back to the the different types of the plant-based diets, there are actually 4 very common types of plant-based diets, consisting of the semi-vegetarian diet, or otherwise known as flexitarian, flexible, from the word flexible. So basically, people who are semi-vegetarians, they still follow very much a plant-based diet, but they also allow consumption of animal products such as eggs and meat and milk. And at the same time, they also allow consumption of meat, poultry, fish, and seafood, but very occasionally. So the majority of the diet will still be plant-based. And then the second type of plant-based diet are those called as pescatarian. The word pesky comes from the word fish. So these are again people who still follow a plant-based diet. They still consume eggs and dairy. The only difference from the semi-vegetarian is that they do not consume meat, as in meat or poultry, but they consume fish and seafood. So these are more of like vegetarians and allowing fish and seafood, but no meat. All right. And then the third type is the one who are the vegetarians. So the vegetarians is a little bit more stricter than the pescatarians. vegetarian and the semi-vegetarian, whereby they still consume plant-based diet. They still consume eggs and dairy, but no, they don't consume meat and they don't consume fish as well as seafood. So the only animal products that is allowed is eggs and dairy. And then you go on to the last one, which is the most strict, which is like the vegans. So the vegans, no meat at all, no fish, no seafood, no eggs and dairy. So they are fully vegetarian. Yeah. So that's just to give you, a brief idea of what plant-based diet is all about. But like I said, when you are someone who's following a plant-based diet, so you very much dictate what kind of diet you want to eat. I mean, there's no prohibition that you cannot consume certain foods. You yourself can dictate whether you want to eat meat or you want to eat fish or you want to eat seafood. But as long as the majority of your diet is made up of plant-based products. Yeah. I hope.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Yeah, I think that was a very clear explanation. And in fact, actually, my next few questions was on the difference between these types of diet. But yeah, it looks like our close. So perhaps, Doctor, maybe you could, since you have a very great background in nutrition, so perhaps you can maybe enlighten us on like the different nutritional aspects. So between all of these different types of diet. So in terms of like people who are like choosing one of the 4 diets that you mentioned, will there be any nutritional deficits in a way? Yeah.
I wouldn't say there will be any nutrient deficit. I think it very much depends on the type of diet that you eat. I mean, one of the things that people always find the issues that they have is that they think just because they follow a plant-based diet, therefore they may be deficient in certain nutrients. Protein comes up a lot because as you know that meat is the main source of protein, right? So they think that if they omit meat from their diet, therefore they will not get enough protein. But actually, there are many food sources from plants that are actually rich in protein. For instance, soy products like tofu or tempeh or even beans and pulses, there are actually rich sources of proteins. The only nutrients that may be of concern would be possibly vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 is not actually found in plants products. They are only synthesized in animals. However, there are actually many plant products that have been fortified with vitamin B12, meaning that you have vitamin B12 being added into the products. So things like certain fruit juices or cereals or even nutritional yeast, these are the products that can actually, you can find vitamin B12. I mean, even if people who are semi-vegetarian, I mean, by occasionally consuming meat, or even if you still eat eggs and dairy, I mean, you can still get many of the nutrients. What is more important is actually to make sure that you are consuming a variety of foods, because then you are getting all the different adequate or required nutrients from all the different foods, and to know which particular food contains rich in certain type of nutrients. So those are the kind of foods that you want to focus on. I think the only issue is sometimes, especially for people who is just starting out on a plant-based diet, right? So they tend to just consume maybe only a certain type of food because they think, oh, that's the only food that they can eat. So that can be a danger where, you may be omitting certain nutrients. But I guess as you progress, then you start experimenting with new foods, then you will be ensured that you will get the proper amounts of nutrients.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Azlina. So just on the line of the vitamin B12, so you mentioned that only meat products tend to contain vitamin B12. So, but however, there are also like foods available which are fortified. So I'm sure a lot of cereals out there as well are fortified with vitamin B12. So would you say, as for example, a person who is on a very strict diet, for example, a vegan person or a vegetarian person, so is it difficult for them to achieve the same level of vitamin B12 compared to a person who eats meat? Or perhaps would you suggest them to take extra supplements, or is it very individualized?
Yeah, like I say, I think it is again very individualized. So if you're saying a strict vegetarians, so if they are aware or that they have that risk of being deficient in vitamin B12, so then they would want to choose certain food that they know would contain vitamin B12 rather than just omitting it altogether. And again, they may want to consider taking supplements. It's not something that is not allowed. So if they feel that it's going to be at a disadvantage, that is they going to be at risk of being deficient, so they are okay to take supplements. So it's not an issue. But most importantly is to be aware or to just get the information on which types of food that contain vitamin B12. That's to ensure that they get the adequate amounts from the diet. Yes.
All right, thanks, doctor. So moving on in terms of the calorie intake per day. So would you say that there may be a significant difference in terms of the calorie intake per day when you are on a plant-based diet versus a diet which is has a variety including meat?
Yeah, okay. So actually many foods in plant-based diet, they actually contain adequate amount of calorie. So food like that comes from the whole grains like rice, pasta or bread is actually a good source of carbohydrate as well as calorie. The only thing is that when choosing this kind of food, you may want to consider opting for the healthier version. For instance, going for brown rice instead of white rice, wholemeal bread instead of white bread, and all that. Okay, so this kind of food, they are actually rich in dietary fiber, so they helps you at the same time make you feel full a lot longer. So therefore, it helps to keep you full, helps to regulate your weight as well as regulate your blood glucose level as well. So in fact, people who are following a plant-based diet, they tend to not overconsume their calories. So their calorie intake is just enough. Whereas someone who probably eat lots of meat, there's probably a tendency to overconsume their calorie because meat contains quite a bit of fat content, right? So if you remember, if you're talking about calories, so if you compare on a gram basis, fat, 1 gram of fat would actually give you double the amount of calorie as compared to carbohydrate or protein. So meaning that if you eat meat, the same amount of meat as compared to the same amount of bread, for instance, you're getting double the amount of calories. So there is possibly a tendency to overconsume the calorie content when you're consuming meat. But in addition, if you're following a plant-based diet, normally the intake of calorie is adequate. So you're not really kind of consuming less than what is required. In fact, it's actually just adequate.
All right, that's great to hear, Dr. Azlina. So when we are comparing between a normal diet versus a plant-based diet, so obviously the macronutrients that make up the diets would be different, and hence what we are taking into our bodies as well would be different. So what would your advice be to someone who is starting a plant-based diet? So how can they ensure that they get all of the macronutrients in the right proportions and the right calories?
Okay, so simple advice to me is just to make sure that you eat a variety of diet, you eat a variety of plant-based foods, and everything must be in moderation. So just as you mentioned earlier, our nutrients consist of the macronutrients as well as the micronutrients. So the macronutrients are the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. These are the ones that you require in a larger amount. So this would be the food that comes from your whole grains, from your bread or your pasta or your beans and lentils, and then you have your fruits and vegetables, which are the main sources of your vitamins and minerals. So you need to ensure that you are eating a variety of this kind of foods, and not only to stick to a certain type of food. And in that way, you can ensure that you are getting the adequate amount of nutrients. For example, right, if we take an example of amino acids, for instance, so we know that plant-based foods, normally their amount of amino acids is probably not as high as what you would find in a meat product, for instance. So in order to ensure that you are getting all the necessary amino acids, so you may want to consume different types of foods. So that in order that you can get all the adequate amount of amino acids in order for your body to synthesize the proper proteins.
All right, thanks, doctor. So I guess the adage of variety is the spice of life is quite important here, so to make sure you get everything.
Yes, the keyword is variety.
All right, okay, great. So, doctor, recently, it's been there for quite a while, but people on a vegetarian diet, they tend to opt for some soy-based meat alternatives, just to get maybe the memory of chicken, the taste of chicken, and so on. So, what are your thoughts on that? And, in terms of the long-term adverse effects or perhaps the benefits even. So, we'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, maybe I can tell you a little bit about, for those who probably not familiar, what this meat-free or plant-based meat is all about. So these are actually, some people call it as a synthetic meat, or they use the term as meat alternative or meat substitute or plant-based meat or fake meats, for instance. So they are actually made using ingredients from vegetarian or vegan products. So they don't contain any meats, okay? And they are made in such a way that, like you say, they resemble the real meat in terms of the mouthfeel, the flavor, appearance, as well as chemical characteristics. So this meat substitute, right? They are normally made from plant-based ingredients, and they use ingredients such as tofu. Or they can be made from peas or from mycoproteins, which is a type of edible fungus that they ferment. So these are some of the ingredients that they use. Okay. So in terms of whether they're good or not, it kind of depends. Some say that because in order to produce these plant-based meats, right, they're actually a highly processed food because they're not something that is naturally found, right? So you need to process it. And also, because it's highly processed, they also have lots of chemicals or certain additives that are being added into it. And some studies have also found that some of these processed meats, they are actually high in fats, can be high in fats, and they can be high in salt content as well. So, that's kind of like a pros and cons, but it doesn't mean that it should stop you from eating it. But I guess once in a while, if you really crave the taste of meat, you at least that you have this option of consuming the plant-based meat. And another thing is they can also be quite pricey, and as compared to if you're just consuming a normal plant-based product. So this plant-based meat is actually quite expensive. Yeah.
All right, thanks, doctor. So that was some great insight as well. So when we're looking at all of these types of diet, so the plant-based diet. So in your opinion and in your experience, more than 20 years in nutrition, so in what would you say are some limitations of this diet, if any? Yeah.
Limitations of plant-based diet, you mean? I don't know, limitations, not that I can think of, because if you are eating a healthy plant-based diet, you are getting all the adequate amount of nutrients. A lot of scientific studies that have been done are looking at large population which they have followed for many years, looking at baseline and then looking at disease development, have actually shown that people who follows a healthy plant-based diet, they are actually able to maintain their weight well. Some even was looking to lose weight, they also managed to lose their weight. And studies have also shown that people who follow this plant-based diet, they have a lower risk for non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, as well as cancer, and they also have a better gut health as well as a more healthier gut microbiome too. So the way I can see it, there at this point of time, there is actually more benefits to it than limitation. Possibly limitation. One possible limitation that I can think of is the potential the sustainability, is whether someone can have the motivation to stay on the diet. probably it's possible also that after a while they may crave meat, or or crave chicken, or something like that. But like I say, you yourself dictate the diet, so it's not like it's really you cannot have it. But like I say, once in a while it's okay to indulge in having a piece of steak, or or having a fried chicken or something like that. Yeah, so that's my take for the time being.
Yeah, thanks, Doctor. Looks like I'm on the verge of converting into a plant-based diet as well, I think by the end of this year.
I have been trying to practice plant-based diet for the last 2 years, and and like you say, I do have periods where I crave meat, and it's okay. It's up to you. You feel that you want once a while when you want to eat meat, it is okay. Yeah, so you yourself can decide. Don't let the food control you. You are in control.
Yeah. Yes, that's true, Doctor. Yeah, I guess they say the best diet is the one that you can stick to for the rest of your life. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So, Doctor, moving on. It's a fast-moving world, and they usually say fast life, fast food. So, as adults, busy with work, busy with studies, what is your advice on how to implement a good, healthy diet, which is, like you mentioned, has so many benefits?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you are right. Sometimes when we are busy, we tend to reach out for something that is quick, right? And normally fast is things like fast food or snacks, and things like that. So there are several ways, I guess, that you can try, for people who are busy, like you are medical students. What maybe based on my experience, as well as people around me, what I normally do is that you can buy pre-prepared foods. That's one way, or opt for, like nowadays if you go to the supermarket, right, at the fruit and vegetable section, sometimes you find that they already have vegetables that have been pre-chopped or pre-cut, meaning or salad that has already been pre-washed or pre-made. So it's a matter of you going back and do not have to chop the vegetables anymore. So that will make your preparation time quicker, right? So it's just a matter of adding the ingredients into the pot. Because normally in cooking, as you know, preparation time is the one that takes a lot of time in cooking. So that's maybe one way. One suggestion. It can be a little bit costly because, as you know, buying something that is pre-prepared is normally more expensive. Also, when you have a bit more times during the weekends, like what I normally do is when I cook during the weekends, I tend to cook a lot in batches. I cook a lot, and then I freeze them in portions, and then I defrost them as the week goes along. So that's one way. That's another way. Number 3 is that if you're cooking dinner, for instance, consider to cook a little bit extra so that you can pack for lunch the next day. That's another option that you can think about. Also, you want to keep your food or your meal simple. Don't cook such an elaborate meal that takes 2 hours to prepare. Sometimes just preparing a simple sandwich and a side salad for lunch, that is adequate, and that is also nutritious. So what is important is to ensure that the meal that you are preparing contains all the necessary nutrients that is going to give you with the proper energy to keep it going. Another thing is consider just cooking a one dish meal. So put everything inside the meal, like making a curry and then putting potatoes, putting all the vegetables inside, and then just have it with rice. And that's also another option. Yeah. And also another thing is perhaps to consider ensuring that your pantry or your kitchen is well stocked up with all the necessary spices, all the necessary essentials that whenever you're ready to cook, that you have all these ingredients already in hand. So that's some of the suggestions that I can think of.
All right, thanks, Ogwe. I think those are some great suggestions, which I think I can use as well, and I'm sure the viewers here of this podcast would also be grateful to hear. So, Doctor, now I have quite an interesting question coming up. So, being someone who has so much of experience with nutrition, what would you say is the ultimate healthy diet? Would you say it's a plant-based diet, or what are your thoughts on that?
Don't know about using the term ultimate diet, right? So I guess all diet is healthy, like I say, going back to the keyword is variety and moderation. I think anything, if you eat too much, yeah, or you eat too little, then obviously it's not going to be healthy for you. However, what I can say with respect to plant-based diet is that based on the current scientific evidence, it is pointing to this diet being healthy, as I mentioned earlier, because it has been proven to be protective against cancer, against heart disease. It helps to regulate your blood glucose level. It can help those who want to lose weight, and it can help you to maintain weight. And it's even good for just general health and well-being. But having said that, following a healthy diet sometimes is not enough. It's more of a lifestyle, right? So you need to do it together with exercise, avoiding smoking, and things like that. So it's kind of like it's a holistic thing.
All right, thank you so much for that, Doctor. Yeah, so I guess that's true lah. So I think we're down to our last few questions. So as mentioned earlier, you have about 20 years of experience in nutrition, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come. So in the coming years, what are some of your aspirations and goals? Yeah.
For me, I don't know. I just keep on, trying to tell the public, on the importance of nutrition. What is the importance of eating good food? As you know, that the incidence of obesity is on the rise, not only in Malaysia but worldwide, right? So it's kind of creating awareness on what are the correct foods to eat, and like I said earlier, it's not just about diet, it's about a lifestyle, following a healthy lifestyle. And as you know, nowadays people tend to be very sedentary. They don't go out anymore, even with the pandemic, that kind of like stop people from going out and just being at home for the last couple of years. But now that we are kind of like opening up again, so we hope to see more people becoming more active and participating in more activities outside the house, and being able to again eat healthily as well. So yeah, that is my hope for the future.
Thanks, Doctor. Yeah, those are some very noble goals and aspirations. So since most of our audiences here would be young medical students who will be future doctors, so I guess we can part perhaps with some last words of advice from you, Doctor, that you'd like to share?
Last advice. Well, when we're talking about eating, right? I always think that eating should be an enjoyable experience, and like I said earlier, you should be in control of what you eat. Do not let the food control you. Two keywords to impart, which is moderation and variety. Make sure that everything you eat is in moderation, and ensure that you eat a variety of food to get all the necessary nutrients. Once in a while, it is okay to indulge. It doesn't mean that cakes are not allowed, ice creams are not allowed. They are. If you have certain special celebration, that can be allowed. So lastly, what I want to say is that eat healthy, live healthy in order to be healthy and look healthy.
All right, that was some very sound advice. So once again, on behalf of GOTGM 2022, I'd like to thank Prof Azlina here, not only for her time, but her awesome and knowledgeable insights on a plant-based diet. So Dr. Azlina, thank you so much for
Thank you so much, Joel.